Hello everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to make a Wordle clone with Discord. In case you're not familiar with the game, Wordle is a game where you have to guess a 5-letter word within 6 tries, and every time you guess a word it will tell you whether the word is in the correct spot, whether it's in the wrong spot, or whether it's not in the word at all. As an example, I could guess the word start, and it'll tell me that there's a T in the correct spot and an S in the incorrect spot. Now for my next guess, I would want to keep the T in the correct spot, but move the S to a different location and try different letters that are not in TAR. So let's say I use the word boost. Now I have 3 of the letters correct. I just need to fix the first letter and the third letter in order to make this fully correct. I would not want to guess something like toast because I know that there's no T because this is not yellow, and there's no A here because this is not green. But maybe a guess like hoist would make sense. So now I have 4 of the letters correct. I need to just change the first letter, and I think that the word this time is moist. That's how you play Wordle. What we're going to do in this video is make it so you can play this game within Discord. The first thing I'll do is quickly create a new application. I'll call it Wordle Clone. Then we'll go to Bot, Add a Bot. Then I'll go to OAuth, URL Generator, select Bot and Application commands. In our implementation of Wordle, we'll need it to take input from the user, so we'll have to be able to at least read messages. So I'm going to select Read Messages and View Channels. I'm going to select Send Messages, and I'm going to also add Manage Messages so I can delete messages sent by the user to keep the channel clean. And I'll need to copy this URL and add it to my server. And authorize. Now the bot is on our server, we can see it's over here and it's offline because we have not started the code. The first thing I'll do is copy the token. We'll need that to start the bot. I'll open up this folder I created called Discord Wordle Clone. I'll create a new file that will have the token. So say token equals, in the Discord token, you don't want to share this token with people since it would give people access to your entire bot. I'll be regenerating this token after the video. Now I'm going to create a file called bot.py which will contain the main code for this bot. In order to load the token from the file, I'm going to install python.env. I like to create virtual environments for installing dependencies, but this is not a necessary step. It would work if you install them globally as well. First thing we'll do is install python.env with pip install python.env. And when that's done, we will run pip install Nextcord. So first we'll get the environment variables using OS. We'll say import OS, and we'll use the python.env libraries by saying from.env import load.env. To get started with Nextcord, we will say import Nextcord, and we'll say from nextcord.ext import commands. If you have a bot that only uses slash commands and does not use extensions such as message commands and cogs, you do not need to import commands, and you could create a client class instead by saying client equals nextcord.client. But if you do want to use message commands in addition to slash commands, or you want to use cogs, you'll want to use commands.bot and give it a command prefix. The command prefix does not have to be an actual prefix like question mark, exclamation point. You could give it an empty list, and that would basically mean it has no prefixes. I'll call this variable bot, and we will use load.env in order to load environment variables. To run our bot, we'll have to add the end of the script bot.run and pass it the token, which we can get from the environment variables by saying os.getEnv and token, which is the name of the token in our environment file. Now to create a slash command, if we were to be putting a slash command in cog, we would use @nextcord.slash-command. If we're putting it in our main file, we would instead use @bot.slash-command as the decorator. Here we can give a description. We can say, like, play a game of Wordle, and then we'll give it a name. We can say async def play. That will be the name of the command. If we want to name the command differently, we can specify a name in the decorator, such as like name equals play, and then we can call the function whenever we want. But since this is the name of the function, I will just leave this out. The parameters that this takes is an interaction, which will be a class Nextcord.interaction. And if we want to add additional options, those will be added in as additional parameters to this function. Now in this play function, we wanted to generate a puzzle, create the puzzle to display, and send the puzzle as an interaction response. To do this, I'm going to create a new file. I'll call it utils.py. I'll be able to add some functions here that can be imported. The first function I'll make here is going to be def generate puzzle embed. For now, this is not going to require any parameters, but we can add in additional parameters later. So I'll start off this embed by saying embed equals nextcord.embed. You can set the title over here, say title equals Wordle clone. We'll need to import Nextcord. Now for the description, we can put a bunch of blanks. I'm going to create a function over here called like generate blanks. So let's say here return a string of 5 blank emoji characters. For blanks, we're going to use the default white medium square emoji, which we can say is with \n white medium square. And this is one of the ways in Python to specify a default emoji. And we can say times 5 to make it repeat this 5 times. Now we can say embed.description. We're going to give them 6 guesses, so we're going to create 6 blanks. So I'm going to say new line.join generate blanks times 6. So what this is going to do is it's going to make a list containing 5 blanks, repeat that 6 times, and then join them on the new line character. So we'll have 6 lines containing 5 blank white emojis on each line. Next we can set the footer. We can say embed.setFooter, and we'll say to play, use the command /play, and we'll also say that they can reply to guess. So I'll make this a separate line and say, we'll say to guess, reply to this message with a word. Now this will create a single string containing both these lines. Then we'll say return embed, and this is what we have so far for the puzzle embed. Over here we can say await interaction dot send embed equals embed, and this embed is going to be from our utils generate puzzle embed, and we'll need to add over here from utils import generate puzzle embed. And one more thing before we run this is that / commands can take up to an hour to show up. So if we're doing this for testing purposes, we will want to specify a list of guild IDs for this to take effect in, and for these guild IDs to actually be instantaneous and not take up to an hour to register. So over here we can put the ID of our testing server. So I can do right click, copy ID, and paste the ID over here. And it might be a good idea to make these global, such as making a list over here like Guild IDs, and then pass this into all of our commands if we have multiple. We could also put this in the environment variables so that locally we could have certain IDs where it runs, and on a production server we could have it not use any IDs and therefore be global. To do that, we can put this in our env file. We can say guild IDs and give it this number. And if we want to, we can separate these by commas. If we want this to work for multiple, let's say like a comma separated list, we can say guild IDs is going to be int of the guild ID for each guild ID in os.getEnv guild IDs dot split on comma. So this is going to split this on a comma and convert each of the guild IDs into an integer. But we only want to do this if there actually are guilds. So we can say if os.getEnv guild IDs and give us default so it doesn't throw an error. We can say like none. And then you can say else. We can use the default, which is nextcord.utils.missing. So now we can specify multiple IDs, and for each of them it will run. We can also use just one ID, and that will work as well. Now let's try running this, and then we should see our /play command, and we can run it. Now it gives an error that there's one positional argument given. You're supposed to say text equals over here. Run this again. Now if we use /play, we will see the grid containing all of these empty squares. The next thing we'll do is when we reply to this message, it should fill in these blanks with letters. Now Discord only has emojis for blue letters, but we need letters that are in green, yellow, and gray for this to look like Wordle. To do that, I went ahead and made some custom emojis. To make these custom emojis, I went to the GitHub repository for Tweemoji and downloaded the PNG assets for the regional indicator icons. I ran some image manipulation commands to alter the colors and add some padding around the edges. The result in the end was a bunch of letters with yellow, gray, and green that we can use to play this game. Now, since there are more than 50 of these, you might need 2 servers or a boosted server in order to add all the emojis to Discord. I created a couple extra servers here for that purpose. So here, this server has A through Z in gray and A through X in green. And this other server over here has Y and Z in green and A through Z in yellow. Now, you can get the IDs of these emojis by typing the emoji in the chat and putting a backslash before it and pressing enter. If you do this for all of the emojis, you can get the IDs for all of them, which the bot can use if they share a server. So I'm going to go ahead and invite the bot to be in these 2 test servers as well. This will allow the bot to use these custom emojis when editing messages. All of these emojis will be available to download in the description if you'd like to upload them to your own server. Or if you'd like to play the Wordle clone without adding all these images to your servers, you can use my hosted version of the Discord bot in your server by adding the bot using the link in my GitHub repository in the description. Now that we have all these emojis in a server that the bot has access to, we'll need to be able to use these so we can create a dictionary mapping of letters to emojis. Now here I have 3 keys. I have the green key, yellow key, and gray, and each of them have a letter of the alphabet A through Z mapped to the emoji that corresponds to the green letter, the yellow letter, and the gray letter. If I were to paste this into here, you'd see that that is the gray A. And now we can use these when putting these in a message. Let's go back to bot.py, and we'll need to make the bot listen for new messages. We want it to be so that if you reply to the bot, it will detect that and update the puzzle. So we can use @bot.event and then say async def on message and say message, which is a type of nextcord.message. In this function, we'll need to get the message that was replied to. We'll say if the parent message is not the bot's message, ignore it. And we can also say check that the message has embeds, because we're going to parse the embed in order to update the puzzle. Then we'll need to check that the word is valid, update the embed, and then we will attempt to delete the message. Okay, so first we'll get the message that was replied to. There's an attribute message dot reference that will give you the message that the message is referring to. If not ref or not is instance ref.resolved is a nextcord.message, then we basically do not have a reference, so we will skip this message. If it's not a reply to any message, we will skip it. And now we can say parent equals ref.resolved, which will give us the message that they replied to. Now we can check the author. We can say if parent.author.id is not equal to the bot's user ID, then we will return. If the message does not have embeds, so if not parent.embeds, we can return as well. We also need to check that the word is valid, so we can make a function. So we can say if not is valid word, and we'll pass it the message content. Then we'll say await message.reply. That is not a valid word. And we can make it delete this message. after 5 seconds with delete after equals 5, and make it delete the original message as well by saying await message.delete, and we can pass in delay of 5. And we'll return because we do not want to update the puzzle if it's not a valid word. We'll need to write a function to check for valid words. So I'm going to add this to utils over here. It'll say it takes in a word, which is a string, and it'll return a Boolean of whether it's a valid word or not. So we need to check if this is a valid word. There are a few ways to do this. We can install a Python library such as PyEnchant that would allow us to check if words are valid. But I want this to be more flexible, so instead I'm going to use my own word sources. You can search online, such as on GitHub, for GitHub free word lists, and you'll find things such as Saupods, which is a Scrabble dictionary, among others. Here I'll just be using word lists that I've already created. This is a list of popular 5-letter words. It contains about 3,000 words that many people will be familiar with, whereas the Saupods dictionary contains a lot more words, many of which people would not recognize, but we want to consider these valid if the user types them. The popular list we'll use for generating answers, whereas the full list we'll use for checking if the word that the user inputted is a valid word. Now let's load up these lists into our Python file. I'll put over here in utils, I'll say popular words is equal to open dict popular.txt, read the lines, and split it into lines so we have one word per line, and we will have an array containing all of these words. And for all words, we'll say open dict saupods.txt. In this case, all we need to use this for is for checking if a word is in the dictionary or not. So it'd be efficient to have a set. So we can use a set builder notation and say, let's say word.strip for word in open dict saupods.txt. This will open the file, and for each line in this file, it will read the line, strip off any white space that might be on the end of the line, and then add that to this set. And in the end, we'll get a set of unique words which can be quickly looked up. Now that we have these loaded into our Python file, we can check if a word is valid by saying return word.lower in all words. This will convert the word to lowercase, then check if it is in this list of words. So now that we know the word is valid, we can continue. Next thing we'll need to do is update the embed to contain the new guess. We'll say embed equals update embed and pass it the parent message. And we'll create this function in utils. We'll actually pass the content of the message. So we'll have the guess available over here. So we'll say guess string, and this will return a nextcord.embed. We probably also want to get the original embed so we can have what we need to edit. So over here we will pass the embed. So we can say here embed equals parent.embeds index 0, and then pass that embed to update embed. Now currently the puzzle does not have an answer, so we'll need to make sure that there is an answer. Over here, we can tell it to pick a random word. So in order to generate a puzzle, we want to get a word from our popular words file. In order to know what the correct word is, we'll need to be able to determine what the answer is from the message. One way to do this would be to have a database storing all of the messages and their answers, but to keep it simple, I'll be creating what I'll call a puzzle ID, which will basically be the index of the word in this file. So we'll say puzzle ID equals random puzzle ID. And we'll define this function random puzzle ID to return an integer, which will be the number of a random word in the dictionary. So we'll say return random.randint, give it a number between 0 and the length of the popular words file, -1. Because this will be the lowest number and this will be the highest number that it will choose from. We'll import random, and now we have a function that will return us a random index in this file. Now we can pass puzzle ID to our function generate puzzle embed, and over here we'll say puzzle ID integer, Now we can add the puzzle ID to the text by saying something like ID and puzzle ID, making this an F string so we can insert variables in the middle. We can put like a vertical bar in the middle to separate this. So we have the ID, puzzle ID, a bar, to play, use the command play, and to guess, reply the message with a word. And now that we know the puzzle ID, we can get that out of the message. So we can say puzzle ID equals embed.footer.text.split at index 1. What we're basically doing here is getting the footer of the embed and then the text content of the footer, splitting that so that we have all of the words, each as a separate index in this array, and then we take the second word, because the ID would be the first index, puzzle ID would be the second index. So now we have the ID number that's in the footer of the embed. We can convert this to an integer by putting int around it. And now we can get the answer to the puzzle by using popular words at the index of the puzzle ID. And we'll use that to determine what colors we should color the letters. So we're going to make another function here. I'm going to call it generate colored word. It will take in guess, which is a string, the answer, which is a string, and return a string of emojis with the letters colored. Now the algorithm for this might not be as simple as you might expect. It will require looping over the letters in the string multiple times because we need to remove letters that have already been found. Like for example, if the word was those and you were to guess the word geese, now the last E over here is in the correct spot in the correct place, so it would appear green. However, these other E's would not appear yellow since this E over here appeared in the correct spot. So these E's would appear gray since we already used one of the E's. If this word contained two E's, then both of these E's would be highlighted, but the E was in the incorrect place would not. If the E was in an incorrect spot, one of these E's would appear yellow, but the other one would appear gray since there's only two E's and not three. So in order to do this, we'll need to first loop over all the letters and color them green if they're supposed to be green, and then color the letters yellow if they're supposed to be yellow. So to start off, we'll make all of the letters gray. So I'll create an array called colored word that will contain the emoji code in gray for each letter for the letter in the guess. I'm going to create an array called answer letters, which is going to be the list version of the answer because we'll need to assign indices throughout the process in order to mark them as used. First, we'll need to change colors to green if they are the same letter and same spot. So we can say for I in range length of guess. This will loop through all of the indices of letters in this word. We can say if the guess at index I is equal to the answer at index I, then we'll change it to green. So we'll say colored word at index I is equal to emoji codes in green for this letter at guess index I. And then we will set the answer letters at index I to none. And now we want to loop through the string again to change the colors to yellow if same letter and not the same place. So you can say for I in range length of guess, if guess at index I is in the answer letters, and remember that we removed some of the letters when we marked them as green, and we can say colored word at index I is equal to the emoji codes in the color yellow for guess at index I, and then update the answer letters at index I to not have that letter anymore. We also need to make sure that if we already colored it green, we don't want to color it yellow afterwards. So let's create another array called guess letters, which will be the list of letters in the guess, and we can use that in place of guess everywhere. And we'll also want to update guess letters to be empty as well. We have the colored letter already stored in a different array, so we can update this to be none. And now when we loop over the second time, some of these might be none, so we can say if guess letter sum I is not none, and guess letters I is in answer letters, then colored word index I equals emoji codes yellow of the letter, and then set answer letters to none. We do not need to set guess letters to none in this loop because this is the last time it's going to be looped over. Finally, we can say return empty string.join of colored word. This will take all of the emojis in this list and turn them into a single string. So now in our function to update the embed, we can make a colored word by calling the function generate colored word and passing it the guess and the answer. Next, we need to replace the first empty slot with that guess. So we can find an empty slot. The string for an empty slot is going to be generate blanks. This will give us the string that we use to generate the blanks, and we'll replace the first occurrence with the word. To do that, we'll say embed.description is equal to embed.description.replace empty slot, colored word, and we'll say 1, because we only want to replace the first occurrence and not all occurrences of the empty slots. Now we will return the embed. Need to make sure to update the message as well. So we can say parent.edit. We'll need to use await here and pass it embed equals embed. To delete the message, we can just say try message.delete. This needs to be awaited as well. And we can accept an exception and we'll just pass. Because if it does not delete the message, we can still continue playing even though we'll still have the message in the channel. Now, one more thing to note here is that this is not supposed to be parent.content, or rather message.content, because this is the message that the user sent, whereas parent is the bot's message. We want the guess that is coming from the user. So I'll try running the bot. I'll type /play. Now we see that the ID is 1567. That refers to which word the answer is. If I reply to this message, let's say we guess the word is those, you'll insert the word those into the first slot and color the letters appropriately. Now if we make a second guess, let's say we guessed the word is shard. Now we can find out what the actual word was by looking in the dictionary and looking at line 1567. Now the word right after the actual word, because 1567 is starting from index 1, whereas our ID is actually starting from 0. The word is here's, and there actually is a mistake here because the H should have been still yellow. The problem here is that we don't want to set index I of this generate colored word. Rather, it's the index of the letter in the answered letters. So here we should say answer letters dot index of guess letters index I and set that to be equal to none. Because basically what we did was remove the H from the word because we removed index I. Really want to remove the letter that was guessed from the answer letters, no matter which position it was in. So now I'll restart the bot. And now let's guess the same word again. We'll say shard. And now you see the H is yellow, which it's supposed to be. So let's type in the correct answer this time. We'll say here's, and you'll see that updates the puzzle with all of the letters being green. We probably want to say a message here to say that the game is over. So let's add that in to our embed. So here we will check for game over. If the guess is equal to the answer, that's one way they would have won. So like in the original Wordle, we can give a message based on how many slots they had left. We can count the number of empty slots by using embed.description.count empty slot. Now empty slot is what we studied before, is generate blanks. So we have the 5 blanks. We want to count how many times 5 blanks in a row appears in the description. If num empty slots is 0, we will add to the embed description by saying embed description plus equals. We will say, add a couple lines, we'll make it say few. If there are none left, we'll say few. If there's one left, it'll say great, 2 left splendid, 3 left impressive, 4 left magnificent, and 5 left, we will say genius. Now another way the game can end is if there are no more slots left. Let's move this up 1 line, and we'll say if the number of empty slots is 0, and the guess was not equal to answer, then they lost. So we'll say embed.description plus equals, we'll say new line, the answer was, and we'll put the answer in the embed. Now there's a few more things we should check inside this inside of the onMessage. We should check that the game is not over, because if the game is over, we don't want them to be replying with more guesses. So we can check that the game is not over. We'll make a function over here, def is game over. We'll give it the embed, and we'll return a Boolean. We can know the game is over if we have a double new line, because otherwise the description only has lines of the puzzle. So one way we can check if the game is over is if it contains a double new line. So if there's a double new line in embed.description, it will return true. So now let's add over here if is game over embed. Then we'll say await the game is already over, start a new game with /play. And we'll delete this after 5 seconds and delete their message as well. Now, like we did before, we should probably be doing a try catch on this delete because there could be an error if the bot does not have permissions. In these cases, we wanted there to be a delay of 5 seconds. So now we should also check that they only gave one word. If they gave multiple words, then we don't want to check if the word is valid. So we can say if the length of message.content.split is greater than 1, we'll tell them they have to only enter one word. Please respond with a single 5-letter word. We also probably want to make sure that the user who is interacting with this message was the same as the user who's playing the game. To do that, we'll probably want to use the user in our generate puzzle embed. So let's pass this function interaction.user. This will be the person who created the interaction. And in this function, we'll add user, which is a type nextcord.user, and we'll add that as the author of the embed. So say embed.setAuthor, and we'll say that the name is going to be the user.name, and the icon URL will be the user.displayAvatar.url. And now when we reference the embed later, such as in our onMessage, we can check that the user is the one playing. You can say if embed.author.name is equal to the embed is equal to the message.author.name. Well, if they're not equal, then we want to tell them that it is not their message to respond to. We say this game was started by embed.author.name. Start a new game with /play. Now let's rerun the bot. We'll type /play and it starts a new game. Let's say we type in the word games. You'll add that as a guess. If we say share, it'll add that as a guess. And let's say we type in Hydra. That was the correct answer, and it says impressive. If we try responding again, let's say we guess games. It'll tell us the game is already over, start a new game with /play. Let's do that. Let's say we respond to something that's not a word, like we just put like 5 random letters. It'll tell us that is not a valid word, and it will delete our guess. If we type in multiple words, it will tell us please respond with a single 5-letter word, and it will delete the message. And now let's try to fill up the board. I'm going to add a bunch of guesses to this board. Now we see that the board is filled up. And now that I've run out of guesses, it tells me that the answer was pence. That's it for this video. If you're interested in adding this bot to your server to play Wordle, a link to the source code for this bot, as well as a link to add my version of the bot to your server, will be in the description below. Additionally, I'll link to the emojis I created so you can add them to servers yourself. I hope this video helped you learn something. Let me know in the comments what you're interested in seeing more of, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!